My wife left me homeless. Then I discovered her hidden fortune. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. It was raining hard that night, the kind of cold, relentless rain that soaks you to the bone in seconds. I came home late from a double shift, exhausted but relieved to finally be back. But when I tried to unlock the door, my key didn't fit. At first, I thought I grabbed the wrong one from my work bag. Then I saw it, a brand new lock, gleaming under the porch light. I knocked, called her name. No answer. Then the porch light flicked off, and from inside, I heard her voice, flat, cold, and final. "Don't come back, Daniel. We're done. Take your stuff and leave." My stuff. I glanced through the front window, rain streaking the glass. All my belongings, clothes, laptop, even my old guitar, were stuffed into 3 garbage bags sitting in the driveway. My wallet and phone were nowhere in sight. "What the hell are you talking about?" I shouted, pounding on the door. Her reply was like ice. "You don't live here anymore." The neighbors' curtains twitched. Someone was filming from their phone. Shame burned through me hotter than the anger. I didn't understand. We hadn't even fought recently, at least not enough to justify this. I begged her to talk, but she just turned up the TV to drown me out. By midnight, I was sitting in my car, drenched and shaking. I didn't have cash, my phone battery was dead, and I couldn't even call a friend. Not that many of them would side with me. She'd always been better at spinning stories. 2 weeks later, I was sleeping in that same car when fate decided to twist the knife. I ducked into a coffee shop to get warm and spotted her, my wife, on the local news playing in the corner. She was standing in front of a luxury property, cutting a ribbon with a smug smile, the reporter announcing her as the new owner. The ticker at the bottom flashed, worth over $2 million. I nearly dropped my coffee. My wife, who claimed we were broke, who left me with nothing, had just bought a mansion. And I knew in that moment, she'd been lying to me for years. But I had no idea just how deep her deception really went. I didn't remember leaving the coffee shop. One moment, I was staring at her smug face on the TV. The next, I was in my car, heart hammering, rain slamming against the windshield. My mind replayed every conversation we'd had about money, her sighing about bills, the unexpected expenses, the way she'd guilt me into picking up extra shifts. We were always broke. That's what she said. That's why we never went on vacations, why my old car stayed held together with duct tape, why she couldn't afford to help me pay for my mother's medical bills. But now she was standing on the steps of $1 million property like she'd been born into that world. That night, I broke one of the last rules I'd been clinging to. I went to her sister's place. Melissa never liked me, but I knew she talked too much when she drank. She opened the door with that same sneer she'd always given me. "What do you want, Daniel?" "Just answers," I said, keeping my voice calm. "How did she afford that house?" Melissa's smirk faltered for a second, barely, but I caught it. "You should just move on," she said, but her eyes slid away. "She's doing fine now. Better without you." That was all the confirmation I needed. She knew. Back in my car, I opened my old work backpack. Months ago, I'd stuffed in a pile of unopened mail addressed to her, things she didn't want me touching. Bank letters, property tax notices, legal envelopes from a firm I didn't recognize. I tore one open. It wasn't just a bank account. It was an account I'd never heard of, with transactions in the hundreds of thousands, all happening while we were broke. Offshore deposits, transfers to shell companies, payments to someone listed only as H. Carter. I sat there in the dark, hands shaking. I had just pulled the first thread of a web I didn't even understand yet, and I had a sick feeling that if I kept pulling, it could destroy me. The next morning, I started calling people I thought I could trust. Old friends, mutual acquaintances, anyone who might have seen her after she threw me out. Most didn't answer. A few picked up, but their voices carried that awkward hesitation, the kind you hear when someone's already picked a side, and it's not yours. I called Matt, my closest friend since college. He sighed before I'd even finished my first sentence. "Dan, look, man, it's complicated." "Complicated?" "She left me homeless, Matt. She's got millions stashed away, and I've been rotting in my car." Silence. Then, "She told us you had a gambling problem, that you drained her savings." The words hit me like a fist to the gut. "That's a lie," I said, my voice cracking. "You know me." "She showed us proof," Matt interrupted. "Bank statements, Transactions from your account to online betting sites. I saw them myself. I hung up before I could scream. Those statements, they had to be fake. She was building a narrative, and clearly, it was working. By noon, I'd driven to the address listed on the property deed I'd seen in the news clip. It was gated, of course, with a security camera aimed right at my car. I didn't get out. I just sat there, staring at the sprawling house that used to be ours in my dreams. That's when a black SUV pulled up behind me, boxing me in. The driver's window rolled down, and a man I'd never seen before leaned out. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my yearly salary. "You need to stop asking questions," he said, voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "Who are you?" I asked. "Someone who's doing you a favor. Walk away before you lose more than a roof over your head." He drove off without another word, leaving me shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that my wife wasn't just hiding money. She was hiding danger. And now, whoever was protecting her knew I was looking. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man's cold stare and heard his warning. But fear wasn't enough to stop me, not after everything she'd taken. If anything, it fueled me. I went through the pile of her old mail again, slower this time, checking every envelope for hidden notes or scraps. That's when I found it, tucked between two overdue utility bills, a small, brass key in an unmarked envelope. I turned it over in my palm. It was stamped with the number 312. I knew exactly what it was, a safe deposit box. She used to joke that only paranoid rich people kept those. So why would she have one? Unless she was hiding something she couldn't risk keeping at home. The next morning, I visited every bank in the city, asking vague questions, trying to match the key. By the third one, I got a hit. The clerk asked for ID, and I lied. Told her I was my wife's husband, and we shared the box. She gave me the same polite smile they give to idiots before telling me I'd need a court order. But before she took the key back, I caught a glimpse of her screen. Hillside Savings and Trust, Box 312. It wasn't much, but it was a crack. I could already imagine what might be in there. Deeds, account numbers, maybe even cash. Proof that she'd been lying all along. On my way out, I noticed a man leaning against a black sedan in the parking lot, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. Same build as the guy from the SUV. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched me until I drove away. That night, I sat in my car, staring at the key. Whatever was in that box was important enough for her to keep it hidden and for someone to follow me. I was certain now, if I could open it, I'd finally know the truth. I just didn't realize that truth would turn out to be far worse than I'd imagined. I knew I couldn't walk into Hillside Savings and Trust and legally get into that box. She'd made sure my name wasn't anywhere near it. But I also knew one thing. Money buys silence, and silence can buy access. Through an old coworker, I got the number of someone who handled problems. He went by Vince, and his voice on the phone was all gravel and cigarette smoke. "You want in without paperwork?" he said. "That's messy. Cost you." "I'm already broke," I admitted. "But if what's in there is what I think, you'll get paid double." We met 3 nights later, after closing, in the alley behind the bank. Vince was wiry, older, and looked like he'd been doing this long before I was born. In his hand, a small leather case full of tools. He moved with a confidence that made my stomach churn. This wasn't his first job, and probably not his 100th. 15 minutes. That's all it took. The vault door stayed shut, but Vince had a trick for bypassing the inner boxes. When the lock finally clicked, he gave me a nod and stepped aside. Inside box 312 was nothing like I expected. No wads of cash. No gold bars. Instead, a neatly bound stack of documents, a flash drive, and a slim black notebook. I opened the notebook first. Each page was filled with transactions, dates, amounts, account numbers, offshore banks, shell corporations, payments labeled only with initials. The flash drive, Vince warned, would need to be checked somewhere off-grid. But it was one of the documents that stopped me cold, a purchase agreement for the mansion she'd just bought. The buyer's name wasn't hers, but her lawyer's. And next to the signature, in tiny print, was something that made my blood run cold. Transfer of ownership upon death of Daniel Miller. My name. They were planning for me to die. And I realized, kicking me out might not have been her first plan. I sat in the dark of my car, the rain tapping against the windshield, staring at those words over and over. Upon death of Daniel Miller. My own name printed like a footnote in some business transaction. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the world. If Vince hadn't been there, I might have convinced myself I was overreacting. But he leaned over, took one look, and muttered, "This isn't just about hiding money. Somebody wanted you gone." My mind scrambled back through the last year. The strange accidents, the faulty brakes on my car she insisted on taking to a friend instead of a real mechanic. The food poisoning that had hit me, but not her. The time she'd pushed for a weekend getaway near that cliffside cabin, where the balcony railing had been loose. I'd laughed those off back then. Now they didn't feel like bad luck. They felt like rehearsals. Vince told me to keep my head down and stop digging, but it was too late for that. I needed answers, and if she wanted me gone, that meant she wouldn't just stop because I'd been thrown out. I went to a motel that night, paid cash, and locked the door behind me. Sleep wouldn't come. Every sound outside made my heart jolt. By dawn, I had the flash drive plugged into an old laptop I'd borrowed from a pawn shop. Files opened one by one, scanned IDs of people I didn't know, contracts with forged signatures, even passport photos that didn't look quite real. But the worst was a folder labeled Carter. Inside were emails between my wife and someone named Henry Carter, discussing Phase 2, final paperwork, and removing the obstacle. Me. I was the obstacle. That was when it hit me. If I was the obstacle, then finding out who Carter was might be the only way to survive this. I started with the basics, reverse searching the name Henry Carter. Too many results. I added the city, narrowed it down, and that's when something clicked. A local real estate developer, flashy but private, rumored to have mob connections. I'd seen his face before, not in person, but in a photo my wife once quickly swiped away on her phone. It took 3 days of digging, calling old contacts, and pretending to be interested in buying property before I found out where he'd be. A high-end charity gala at the Grand Meridian Hotel. The kind of place I used to dream of taking my wife to, back when I thought she was the best thing that had happened to me. I didn't have the money for a ticket, but Vince knew a guy who knew a guy. $100 later, I was wearing a second-hand suit and walking into the ballroom like I belonged. That's when I saw him. Henry Carter, in an immaculate navy suit, surrounded by people laughing at jokes I doubted were funny. And next to him, my wife. She looked radiant, untouched by guilt, sipping champagne and leaning into him like they'd been together for years. My stomach twisted. I didn't make a scene, not yet. Instead, I circled the room, pretending to admire the art on the walls until I was close enough to overhear. "As soon as it's finalized, we can move forward," Carter was saying. She nodded, her smile sharp. "He's not going to be a problem anymore." The words were like a knife in my ribs. Carter glanced around the room, and for a split second, our eyes met. His smile didn't falter, but I knew, in that instant, he recognized me. And that meant he knew I was still alive and listening. I didn't stay long after Carter's eyes locked on mine. I slipped out through the service corridor, my pulse pounding in my ears. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but it didn't clear my head. I knew that look, the kind that says you've just moved from being a nuisance to being a threat. I made it halfway to my car before I heard footsteps behind me. Fast, heavy, deliberate. I turned just as a man in a black overcoat stepped into the light. I didn't recognize him, but the way he stood, blocking my path, made it clear whose side he was on. "Daniel Miller?" he asked, voice low but steady. I didn't answer. He took a slow step forward. "Carter says you need to stop digging. You don't want to end up missing." The streetlight above flickered, and in that split second, I caught the glint of something metallic in his hand. Not a gun, a phone. He snapped a photo of me before I could react. "This is your last warning," he said, turning away like the conversation was over. "Go back to your car, drive far away, and forget you ever saw them together." I stood there, watching him disappear into the darkness, my breath fogging in the cold. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but the fire in my chest burned hotter than fear. Back in my car, I pulled out my phone and zoomed in on the blurry photo I'd managed to take of Carter and my wife inside the gala. If they were this desperate to scare me off, it meant I was closer to something big. And then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You have 48 hours. No threats, no signature, just a deadline." I barely slept that night. Every tick of the clock felt like it was chipping away at my life. 48 hours. To do what? Disappear? Stop looking? Apologize for existing? By morning, Paranoia had me checking every shadow. I left the motel, paid cash for a different room 2 towns over, and kept the blinds shut. But hiding wasn't an option. I had 2 days to figure out what Carter and my wife were planning, or I might not see day 3. I started by going through the files from the flash drive again, this time looking for patterns instead of individual clues. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before: several large transfers to a company called Silverford Holdings. On paper, it looked like a real estate management firm, but a quick search told me it had no website, no office, and no staff listed, just a P.O. box. I drove to the address. The office was a rundown strip mall with a locked mailbox. I was about to leave when a door 2 units down opened and a man in a cheap suit stepped out, glancing around nervously. He froze when he saw me. "You're him," he muttered. "The husband." My heart lurched. "Do you know her?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't want to. You shouldn't be here." I stepped closer. "If you know something." "They're moving the money," he cut in. "Tomorrow. After that, you'll never find it." He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. "And if you're smart, you'll be gone before they finish." Before I could ask another question, he ducked back inside, locking the door. I walked away with my pulse spiking. Now I had a new ticking clock, less than 24 hours to stop them from vanishing the fortune. And if I wanted to do that, I'd have to get much closer to Carter and to her. The next night, I parked 2 blocks away from the mansion she'd bought, engine off, lights out. From where I sat, I could see the long, winding driveway lit by expensive ground lamps, the kind that made the whole place look like a movie set. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel. I knew this was insane. I also knew I had less than a day before the money disappeared forever. Just after midnight, the front door opened. She stepped out, my wife, wearing a silk robe, talking on her phone. Even from this distance, I could hear her laugh. That same laugh I used to fall asleep to. Now it sounded like a blade scraping against glass. I slipped out of the car, keeping to the shadows. The gate was locked, but the side fence had a section I could climb. My heart thudded in my ears as my shoes hit the gravel on the other side. She was still pacing on the porch, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, the transfer will be done by morning. Carter's handling the offshore accounts himself." "No, he doesn't suspect a thing." I froze. "He doesn't suspect a thing." Did she mean me, or someone else? When she ended the call, I stepped forward. "We need to talk." She spun around, her eyes going wide for just a second before narrowing into something colder. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," I said. "Unless you want to explain the offshore accounts, the safe deposit box, the murder clause with my name on it." For the first time since this nightmare began, she looked rattled. But it lasted only a heartbeat before that smirk returned. "You have no idea what you've walked into, Daniel," she said, voice low. "And you're already in deeper than you can handle." From the corner of my eye, I caught movement, a tall shadow stepping out from behind the house. Carter. And he wasn't smiling. Carter stepped into the pool of light spilling from the porch, his tailored suit catching a faint silver gleam. The way he moved, slow, deliberate, made my skin crawl. He didn't need to rush. He already knew I was trapped. "You've been busy," he said, his voice calm but heavy with threat. "Too busy." I glanced at my wife. She didn't look surprised to see him there. In fact, she looked pleased, like this was part of the plan. "I want the truth," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "Every cent you've stolen, every lie you've told. I know about the transfers. I know about Silverford Holdings. And I know about the clause with my name on it." Carter chuckled, a deep, humorless sound. "You think you're the first man to dig where he shouldn't? You're alive right now because you're more useful breathing than buried." My wife crossed her arms. "Let's just tell him, Henry. He's not leaving until he gets something." Carter studied me for a long moment, then took a step closer. "Here's my offer. You disappear. Tonight. You get enough cash to start over somewhere far away, and you never speak our names again. Or," he tilted his head, "we handle things the other way." My pulse thundered. "And what happens to the money?" "That," he said, "is none of your business." I could feel the trap tightening. If I walked away, I'd live, but she'd get away with everything. If I stayed, I might not survive the night. Before I could answer, Carter's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then shot my wife a look that made her smile fade. "We have a problem," he said. And for the first time, I realized their perfect little scheme might be cracking from the inside. "What kind of problem?" my wife asked, her voice clipped. Carter didn't answer right away. He turned his back on me, speaking low into the phone. I caught fragments. Not secure. Moved early. Who else knows? When he hung up, his jaw was tight. The accounts, he said finally. One of them's been accessed. Her eyes flicked to me instantly. It's him. It's not, Carter snapped. This was from inside. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The night air felt colder, heavier. My mind raced. If someone else was pulling at the threads, maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. Inside, she repeated, stepping toward him. Who? Doesn't matter. Carter cut her off. We locked down everything now. That means no transfers until I know exactly who's playing games. Her posture stiffened. We can't delay. You promised. I don't care what I promised. His tone made even her shut up. I stood there, feeling like I'd just been handed the smallest piece of leverage. If someone else was sabotaging them, it might be my only chance to blow the whole thing open. Carter finally turned back to me. You. Go home. Forget this conversation happened. I smirked despite the fear clawing at me. I don't have a home, remember? He didn't take the bait. He just nodded to the shadowed side of the house, and another man, I hadn't even noticed him until now, stepped forward. Escort him off the property. They thought pushing me away would make me stop. But I'd seen something in her face when Carter said inside. A flash of panic. Distrust. And if they were starting to doubt each other, I could use that. The man in the shadows walked me to the gate, his grip firm on my arm. He didn't speak, and I didn't push it. I needed him to believe I was retreating, that I'd been intimidated into giving up. But the second his silhouette disappeared in the rearview mirror, I circled back. Not to the mansion. That would have been suicide, but to the service road behind it. I knew from years of living with her that the property backed onto a narrow wooded strip. From there, you could see straight into the upstairs office if the blinds were open. I parked down the block, crept through the trees, and settled behind a tangle of shrubs. My reward came 15 minutes later. The blinds on the office window shifted, lights spilling through. She was there, pacing, phone to her ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see her face. She was angry, no, furious. She slammed her palm on the desk, then yanked a file from the cabinet. Papers scattered. She swept them aside until she found what she wanted, a flash drive. Then came the moment that made my breath catch. She picked up a suitcase, small, hard-sided, the kind used for cash or jewelry, and slid the drive inside. If Carter had ordered a lockdown, why was she packing things up? My pulse kicked harder. She wasn't following his orders. She was making her own move. She looked toward the door suddenly, shoving the suitcase under the desk. Carter appeared in the frame, his posture sharp. They exchanged words, her voice rising, his staying cool. Then he stepped closer, so close it looked almost intimate, but the tension in their bodies said otherwise. I couldn't hear what he whispered, but I saw the way her hand trembled as he left. They didn't trust each other anymore. And if I could make that crack wider, I might just bring both of them down. I waited until the house went dark, then headed back to my motel. My mind was racing with possibilities. If she was moving something behind Carter's back, she was breaking their alliance, and that meant I had a chance to pit them against each other. The next morning, I put the plan in motion. I printed an untraceable note on a motel lobby printer. No handwriting, no fingerprints. It read, Carter's not telling you everything. Ask him about the Cayman account, and who else has access. I slipped it into an unmarked envelope and paid a bike courier cash to deliver it to the mansion's mailbox. No return address, no trail. Then I did the same thing for Carter. His note read, she's pulling from the Cayman account without you. Check her office. By noon, I was parked 2 streets over, waiting. At 3:17 p.m., the front gates opened and Carter's SUV roared out. His face was set, jaw tight. 15 minutes later, her car shot out in the opposite direction, tires squealing as she took the corner. They weren't together. I followed her first. She drove to a storage facility on the edge of town. Through the windshield, I watched her punch in a code and disappear inside. She emerged 10 minutes later carrying that same hard-sided suitcase. She shoved it into her trunk and sped off again. I didn't follow her this time. Instead, I called Vince. She's moving something big, I said. I think it's the proof we need. Then you'd better get it before Carter does, he replied. Because if either of them figures out you planted those notes, you're dead. I hung up, staring at the road where she'd vanished. Tomorrow, the money was supposed to disappear. But if I played this right, they might destroy each other before that happened. The next morning felt like the last hand of a high-stakes poker game. One wrong move, and I'd lose everything, including my life. The air was cold, the sky heavy with storm clouds, as I parked across from the storage facility and waited. At 9:42 a.m., she arrived. No Carter, no security, just her, in dark sunglasses, scanning the lot like she expected trouble. She popped the trunk, grabbed the suitcase, and hurried toward her unit. I slipped out of my car and followed at a distance. The metal door clanged as she rolled it up. Inside, I caught glimpses, cardboard boxes, a filing cabinet, and on top of it, another smaller safe. She set the suitcase down, punched a code into the safe, and pulled out a thick envelope. That's when the sound of tires screeching cut through the air. Carter's SUV skidded into the lot, blocking the exit. Two of his men jumped out, moving fast. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "You followed me?" she shouted as Carter strode toward her. "I should have known," he said, voice like ice. "You were planning to run." They didn't notice me slip inside, hugging the wall. Carter grabbed the suitcase, but she clung to it. The argument exploded, accusations, threats, each blaming the other for the Cayman account leak. Then, in a burst of fury, she yanked the suitcase open. Cash spilled out, along with the black notebook from the safe deposit box and the flash drive. Carter froze. So did his men. I didn't. I lunged, snatched the drive, and bolted out the back door. Shouts erupted behind me, but I was already in my car, tires screaming as I hit the road. In the rearview mirror, I saw Carter and my wife still locked in a shouting match, neither chasing me. They were too busy destroying each other to notice that I'd just walked away with the one thing that could end them both. And for the first time since she locked me out, I wasn't running anymore. I was going to war.